voter suppression, legalizing gay marriage, exposing torture, protecting internet speech, desegregation of schools, and trying to revoke Roe versus Wade. All of these cases and many others have been argued and protected by the ACLU all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now, who is the ACLU, or the American Civil Liberties Union? What does the ACLU do? The Civil Liberties, the American Civil Liberties Union is a social justice group that stands up for all of our individuals' rights, not just here in America, for any individual rights and for what America stands for. Okay, now why is this relevant to all of us? The Constitution can be interpreted in many different ways, depending on the individual. Now, individuals try to make laws at times that infringe on our constitutional rights. And the ACLU seeks to protect in court the constitutional rights of individuals or groups, regardless of political, economic, social, or religious beliefs. Now, I will give you 3 reasons as to why we need to support and understand why or what the ACLU does. 1, violation of human rights. 2, fighting against voter suppression. And 3, freedom of speech. Okay. Now, violation of human rights. Imagine for a second that somebody takes your kids without any contact, not just for a day, but for years, admits no wrongdoing, and makes it impossible for your kids to return to you. Now, this is clearly a distrust and a violation of human rights conducted by the White House. And currently, the ACLU is fighting for over 600 children to be reunited with their parents. As Lee Grant, the deputy director of the ACLU Immigrants' Right Project, states, the fact that they've been sitting on these phone numbers has been really outrageous. What he's trying to say is that the White House has held information to return these children back to their parents for a political gain and has violated basic human rights. And this is in the article in the Time, Government Shares Formally Disclosed Data of Separated Parents by Jasmine Aguilera. Now, moving on to the second point, fighting against voter suppression. It is 2020. We just had a presidential election. And to this day, the President of the United States has tried to suppress votes in large cities, predominantly where people of color live. Now, he has tried to claim that there has been fraud and try to admit or wanting recounts for these votes. Now, the fact that since 1965, when African Americans were first given the right to vote, individuals still to this day have tried to infringe on people's right to vote. Currently, the ACLU has fought very many of the current administration's voting or try to suppress voting rights, as the professor of Carl Anderson of American Studies at Emory University states. It's a very narrow, slippery slope from saying illegal votes to legal votes. So this attack on Black voters is real. And this is in the article by the Washington Post, Anger Bills in Black Community Over Trump's Claim of Voter Fraud in Big Cities by Ashley Nguyen. Now, what he's trying to say here is that to this day, the African American vote and many other minorities have been trying to get their votes suppressed. And the ACLU fights for these rights, not just for some of us, but for all of us. Okay, moving on to the third point, freedom of speech. Most of us have some sort of social media, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, and relatively speaking, we can say and post whatever we want. But what if that was not the case? What if your language was censored based on a government law? Okay, this almost happened in the Reno versus the ACLU in the challenge to censor provisions in the Communications Act of 1996, where it would have made it a crime and punishable up to 2 years in jail and $250,000 fine for anyone that was engaged in indecent or partially offensive speech. Now, as we all know, what we say can be interpreted by another person any way they want. Now, in order to silence individuals, they could easily make a law. Now, the ACLU fought and actually stopped the government from passing this. Okay, now moving on to the conclusion. As I've explained, voter suppression, legalizing marriage, and many other constitutional rights that we have been protected by the ACLU in court. Nobody else has been up to the Supreme Court arguing more cases besides the Justice Department than the ACLU. The problem is clear. The Constitution and the individuals interpreting the Constitution that make our laws need somebody else to interpret and fight back for the rights of everybody else. And that's what the ACLU does. Now, I've given you 3 reasons: the violation of human rights, fighting against voter suppression, and freedom of speech, as 3 reasons why we need to support and understand what the ACLU does. But there are countless other cases that I have argued against and won. Now, we all need to take a little step back and think of all the freedoms that we have that are protected to the Constitution. And we have to have a group like the ACLU to stand up and fight for the freedoms of all individuals whenever they feel threatened.